All right. Thank you all for joining us today. So great to be with you. We just wanted to give everybody another maybe 30 seconds to finish logging on. We see people coming in. There's more and more logging on. So we're just giving it just a minute. We see people still coming into the room, but just wanted to say a thank you for joining us. I'm James Lane, the CEO here at PDK International, and I'm excited to be with you today. Recently, our policy shop here at Phi Delta Kappa International, with support from Bohanan Strategies, has released some new information on the benefits of an Ed Rising program, but we also released a paper recently on draft legislation that can be utilized in your communities and states to support grow your own high school programs. And once we get everyone logged in here, we're going to get started in just a moment. But thank you for being with us. Just one more second. I'm still letting a couple people in the door. Okay, I think the last ones are here. But again, I'm James Lane, CEO of PDK International. I'm new to the organization. We've been here a few months. We are excited to be doing policy work that has been supported by many of our benefactors here at Phi Delta Kappa International. If you don't know PDK, we lead a ton of work at PDK, especially in the teacher shortage space. And we really are focused on helping to build pipelines through middle schools and high schools to ensure that our schools are chock full of not just amazing teachers, but those that represent their communities and are trained with the best skills possible. We've been doing this work for a long time. PDK was founded in 1906, but we began to lead Future Teachers of America in 1994. And in 2015, we took Future Teachers of America, Future Educators of America, the Future Educators Association, and consolidated those brands into Educators Rising. We built an amazing curriculum using support from many partners, and basing a lot of that on the National Board for Professional Teaching standards. So we're not just training future educators, we're training future educators prepared to be the best educators in their community. We are also a full career and technical student organization. So we not only support our students with curriculum, we support them with chapters and conferences and competitions, but really a community and a nationwide movement to get more of our high school students excited about being in the classroom and doing the amazing work that happens there. An interesting statistic that Educators Rising was founded on is that 60% of teachers actually teach within 20 miles of where they went to high school. And so we really believe that the best way to eliminate the teacher shortage, on top of significantly increasing salaries and significantly improving working conditions for teachers, is to actually recruit those students in their home communities to become teachers. So thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about this research that shows that Ed Rising is having a significant impact on education, on the classroom. And we're going to talk a little bit about how state legislators, local policymakers, or even our teachers and principals can support these programs in our communities. And so I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Levi Bohanan, but there's a great quote on the screen here. When districts reach out for hiring, they want to find candidates who are in Educators Rising because they know that these students are much more established than the standard new educator. Not only will they have been through a 4-year EPP program or maybe a registered apprenticeship where they've been working as a paraprofessional for many years, they actually spent maybe a few years in high school, maybe a few years in middle school, but by the time an Educators Rising student hits the classroom, they've been working deeply in the education sector for 6 to 8 years, dating back to their teenage years. But I want to introduce you to a colleague of mine, Levi Bohanan. If you don't know, I came to PDK International after serving for 2 years at the U.S. Department of Education as the Acting Assistant Secretary for Elementary and Secondary Education. I was also the state superintendent in Virginia. I was a district superintendent in 3 districts. and a principal, but most importantly, a teacher and a band director early in my career. But in my journey, I had the amazing opportunity to meet Levi Bohanan, who served as a special assistant at the U.S. Department of Education with me, and is just one of the best policy people I've ever worked with. And now he's here with us at PDK and doing amazing policy work. For those of you on the call, would love to see you drop any questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat. Levi's going to present some of the material, and then we're going to do Q&A at the end. But if nothing else, just introduce yourself in the chat, where you're from. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our policy partner, Levi Bohanan. Levi?
Thanks so much, James. I appreciate it. Really excited to work with you and the whole PDK team on this research and this work. So really looking forward to our conversation today and looking forward to hearing from the folks who are in the audience. I would love to start by providing a little bit more context and digging into some of the stage setting that James did at the top. This study is part of a broader movement in education research, which I'm sure the folks in this webinar are very well aware of. Fits into this broader theme of teacher preparation across the country, and really trying to better understand what is happening and furthermore, what is going to happen in the future of the teaching profession in America. Enrollments and completions of teacher preparation programs are lower today than they have been in a decade. In my home state of New York, education officials estimate that the state is going to need over 200,000 new teachers in the new decade. Big cities and rural districts alike continue to report severe shortages in critical subject areas, including math and special education. All of that is to say that this study was conducted on the backdrop of these strains on the teaching profession that we've seen for years, some since long before the COVID-19 pandemic, and other factors compounded by the inequitable lingering impacts of the pandemic, particularly on communities of color and low-income communities. Disparities in access to quality education, particularly in these underserved communities, underscore the urgency of innovative interventions to address the shortage crisis. Within this intricate fabric of the educational landscape in the country, the quest for either effective teacher preparation programs and/or student support programs continues to persist. And this white paper that brings us together today is part of that broader, deeper, and ongoing dive, which digs into the work of Educators Rising. The white paper details some of the most exciting work of Ed Rising and shows that the group is uniquely positioned across the field, poised at the intersection of teacher preparation, student empowerment, and community engagement. For years now, teacher preparation programs, particularly grow your own preparation programs like Ed Rising, have emerged as promising pathways to cultivate a diverse, resilient teaching workforce rooted in local communities. Typically, these programs emphasize the principles of community-centric education and encompasses curriculum development, student-led initiatives, mentorship programs, and community partnerships, to name a few. By fostering a culture of inquiry, collaboration, and experiential learning, Ed Rising transcends traditional paradigms of teacher preparation. But before I go into these findings that we developed with a research team, let me talk very briefly about the most boring part of today's webinar, which will be the methodology. The inquiry adopts a mixed methods approach, blending qualitative interviews and quantitative analysis to illuminate the multifaceted dimensions of Ed Rising's impact. Through endemic coding triangulation and data analysis, the research team took a deep look at Ed Rising, particularly those underlying patterns and emergent themes embedded within and across the group's work and impact at the local, state, region, and national stage. So our research questions dug into those. First, by asking, how does integrating a student organization as a component of teacher preparation program impact the development of pre-service teachers' pedagogical skills and classroom management abilities? And the second question, does the Ed Rising curriculum impact the pre-service teachers' understanding of the profession? In particular, how does the curriculum affect pre-service teachers' understanding of the diverse learning needs and their ability to differentiate instruction effectively? The first question focuses on how incorporation of a student organization, in this case, the chapters of Ed Rising, into a teacher preparation program delivered in high school influences the pedagogical and classroom management skills of pre-service teachers. The data set includes qualitative data from interviews focused on student participation and some quantitative data collected by Ed Rising. The second question digs into how the Ed Rising curriculum shapes pre-service teachers' awareness of diverse student needs and their ability to adapt instruction accordingly. The data set includes a review of EdRising curriculum, qualitative data from interviews focused on implementation. On the next slide, you'll see the beginning of what our findings. It should come as no surprise that the largest impact that was shown as part of the work is shown in students, and most impactful for students who participate in EdRising work. The qualitative and quantitative data show that students who have participated in EdRising student groups or chapters demonstrate increased engagement, enhanced leadership skills, and a deeper understanding of educational principles. These chapters served as a dynamic platform where aspiring teachers could engage in meaningful discussions, collaborative projects, and curriculum, community, and local, state, or national competitions that extended beyond traditional classroom settings. You'll see on the next slide where we talk a little bit about how the program has teachers involved in the program express satisfaction with the initiative, noting improvements in the classroom dynamics and an increased sense of collaboration amongst students. The mentorship component of the program was highlighted by folks who were interviewed as a particularly valuable aspect, fostering positive relationships between students and teachers. Teachers observed enhanced self-efficacy among participating students, contributing to a more positive learning environment within the high school. Beyond academic outcomes, you'll see on the next slide, the qualitative data revealed the program's positive influence on the social emotional growth of participating students. Interviews with educators consistently highlighted the development of interpersonal skills, empathy, and a strong sense of community for students who were participating in EdRising curriculum. Educators shared that students involved in the program reported feeling more connected to their peers and teachers, creating a more supportive network that extended beyond the confines of their classroom or chapter meetings. This aspect of the program's impact underscores the broader educational benefits associated with teacher preparation initiatives embedded within the high school setting, particularly in this case, EdRising. On the next slide, you'll see that educators reported that participation in EdRising chapters contributes to a sense of community and shared responsibility for academic success among participants. The student chapters were particularly effective at promoting peer mentorship and collaborative learning, as participants could share their insights, challenges, and successes in a relaxed and inclusive setting that is different from the classes that particularly students who were not engaged in a teacher prep program that begins in high school were able to experience. The next impact that we were able to see was the impact that the program had on educators. Chapter leaders, who were often educators or school district staff, also reported that participating students expressed heightened interest in pursuing higher education, specifically in the field of education, indicating a potential long-term effect on career aspirations. Student chapters formed within the framework of the Teacher Preparation Initiative were found to significantly enhance the sense of community collaboration and shared purpose among participants. Participation in EdRising catalyzes a transformative journey of student empowerment characterized by heightened engagement, leadership development, and career aspirations. EdRising serves as a crucible for pre-service teacher preparation, nurturing pedagogical acumen, professional identity, and sense of efficacy among aspiring educators. The symbiotic relationship between mentor teachers and pre-service educators fosters a dynamic ecosystem of knowledge exchange, reflective practice, and instructional innovation. Preliminary findings underscore the positive impact of teacher preparation program on the professional growth and efficacy of participating teachers. Mentor teachers indicated a heightened sense of purpose and job satisfaction as they guided aspiring educators through their developmental journey. Participants, in turn, expressed increased confidence in their teaching abilities, highlighting the program's role in refining instructional practices and expanding their pedagogical repertoire. One educator shared that she saw it breathing new life for her peers without leaving the classroom. On the next slide, you'll see that one reoccurring theme in the qualitative data was the cultivation of collaborative learning communities within the program. Teachers noted that the value of interdisciplinary collaboration created and facilitated by EdRising and shared best practices, fostering a culture of continuous improvement. The collaborative nature of the program not only enriched the professional development experiences of participating teachers, but also contributed to a positive and supportive school culture that extended beyond the program itself. An educator who provides state support to EdRising staff noted that the organization very intentionally brings chapter sponsors and teacher leaders together to communicate with teacher leaders and sponsors and to learn from one another, creating a database, engaging in resource sharing, providing planning opportunities for the teacher leaders to communicate with one another. You'll see on the next slide, the qualitative findings suggest a potential positive correlation between participation in high school-based teacher preparation program and teacher retention. Educators who mentored aspiring teachers reported a sense of fulfillment and renewal in their roles, which in turn may contribute to increased teacher retention rates. The program's emphasis on professional support and mentorship emerged as a key factor in creating an environment conducive to sustained commitment to the teaching profession. A state education agency official who supports teacher preparation programs across the state noted that EdRising is a tremendous leadership experience for instructors who have been teaching for a while. They have the opportunity to lead and coach in this way, and many have reported that they felt reinvigorated to rejoin the profession or to engage with the profession newly, and that speaks volumes of the program from their perspective. The next section talks a little bit about the impact that EdRising can have and has had on communities. EdRising emerges as a catalyst for community engagement and empowerment, forging, again, symbiotic related partnerships between schools, educators, students, and local stakeholders in the community. By fostering collaborative learning communities, EdRising transcends traditional boundaries, nurturing shared responsibility and equity across educational ecosystems. One notable finding is the positive impact of the teacher preparation program on community engagement and empowerment. The program not only drew community members in the educational sphere, but also provided for collaboration between schools and local residents. One district official noted that she had seen schools that do not have this kind of expression began to have difficult conversations in classrooms across the communities. It shows them how they talk about embracing culture as a whole and ensures that students, as they walk into the classroom, are going to be able to be ready to be educated wherever they come from. Through initiatives such as community workshops, informational sessions, and collaborative projects, the program empowers community members to actively participate in the educational process, fostering a sense of responsibility for student success. You'll see on the next slide a recurring theme in the qualitative findings is the strengthening of relationships between school and community, which we've been discussing. The teacher preparations program can serve as a bridge, EdRising can serve as a bridge, fostering positive connections between educators, students, and local residents. The strengthened collaboration is evident across increased attendance at school events, enhanced communication channels, and a shared commitment to both success of both individual students and the broader educational community. You'll see on the next slide, we talk a little bit about this cycle of what EdRising can do. I think that maybe on the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So I've been working with the EdRising and our collaboration with the PDK team and the EdRising team in particular. We've developed this cycle that displays the work of EdRising and the impact it can have on a local, state, regional, and national scale, beginning by engaging educators in the EdRising process, letting them become aware of what the teacher preparation program looks like within EdRising, and establishing a chapter within a school or local community context. As that chapter begins to develop in stage 2, you'll see the 5 C's, which are crucial to the development of EdRising and crucial to that model. And that includes the chapters, the curriculum, the competitions, the conference, and the community. Those 5 C's are an important part of EdRising, and engagement with those within a school community leads to the 3rd step, which talks a little bit about how after a student has graduated from a high school setting and having participated in EdRising, either curriculum conferences or competition or all of the 5 C's, that a district or a school can provide a signing day, encouraging them to provide a signing day for future educators, that students that are enrolled to become educators in higher education to become certified, and guaranteeing them an opportunity to come back to their district after they've graduated and come back to their school community where they were themselves students after they have graduated. And that kind of commitment is a very helpful tool to engage students and to make sure that they not only remain committed to the teaching profession, but know where they will land and have an opportunity to plug back into their communities at the end of it. Part number 4 has to do with making sure that those students have the tools that they need in order to engage in higher education. That includes making sure the student is aware of FAFSA, making sure that they are aware of loan forgiveness, either at the national scale or the state scale for participating states, and increasing cooperation with institutions of higher education that are providing degrees as well as certifications. Step number 5 has to do with making sure that those students that are on the track to become educators, having participated in EdRising chapters and curriculum when they were in high school, have the opportunity to plug into a community in an institution of higher education, providing either collegiate support or some sort of opportunity for them to continue to be in a classroom. What we have heard, or what I have heard from folks, is that within the first couple of years for students that want to become educators, in the absence of having the opportunity to either be in a classroom or do some early student teaching, begin to lose their focus or can begin to think about other career paths that are not education focused. And providing that kind of community is a really important aspect to make sure that these folks, that these students who have participated in the programming so far can continue to feel that community while they're enrolled in institutions of higher education. Step 6 is when folks are beginning to be in the classroom more intensely. So that can be an apprenticeship model. That could be folks that are already paraprofessionals, but they are in the classroom and making sure that they have the support that they need to either complete their graduation or complete their certification and achieve the level of licensing that they need to become the teacher of record. Step 7 has to do with making sure that students who have participated in this programming have the opportunity to loop back to their district or school. Like James said at the beginning, I really resonate with the statistic that he shared, that the majority, that 20% of students teach in the school district where they grew up in, or within 20 miles of the school district or school that they graduated in, and having that kind of solid commitment from the home district that we talked about in section number 3 is a really compelling opportunity for students to re-engage and continue to their commitment to the education profession. Stage 8 has to do with one of the more exciting aspects of this, one of the more concrete, which is receiving the credentialing so that students can begin working and becoming the teacher of record in their home district. And step 10 has to do with continuing to expand and develop the chapters that exist within the school district so that the cycle can continue. James, I see that you have jumped on. I would love to invite you to talk a little bit more about this cycle before and answer any questions that you may have, as well as giving folks an opportunity to respond before I start talking a little bit about the draft legislation that we worked on as well.
My apologies. It wouldn't let me unmute myself for some reason, so the host had to do that. But thanks, Levi. We actually got a question in the chat that I think is actually relevant to this slide. So rather than waiting till the end, I thought I would kind of pose it. I'll probably answer it, but feel free to jump in here. I'll ask the question, and then I'm going to add some context around what we see here in the ideal Grow Your Own program. So the question that came from Dr. Coleman was, is there an analysis of data around Ed Rising programs that are extracurricular clubs compared to Ed Rising program that are embedded into career and tech programs? And so that really speaks to the first step of the spiral here. And, that you're starting a high school CTE program to prepare students to become teachers. And actually, we have a lot of districts around the nation that are actually starting the chapter program as early as middle school to allow the chapter to be a recruitment for the CTE program in high school. And part of what we're trying to suggest today with this spiral is that you're not going to see the effectiveness in Grow Your Own programs unless you're doing all 10 of these components. And that what we see is that along the way, some districts will have a piece of this, maybe 1 through 3, but they won't have 4 through 10. And what we're finding in our conversations with students that are matriculating through the whole pathway is that there are a lot of different breaking points to the pipeline. So there are a lot of students that graduate and want to go to college, but they'll run into step 4 and they'll find that if they don't get support to pay for college or know about the options of loan forgiveness when they get into service, sometimes that becomes a barrier. We're aware with step 7, there are some schools, colleges of education, that essentially promote student teaching centric to the university only. And what you find is that the school districts and school divisions right around the university have less shortage issues than maybe some of the rural or other areas a little further from the university because they don't provide that flexibility. But what we know is because 60% of teachers around the nation are teaching within 20 miles of where they went to high school, it's extremely important as you're building out your Grow Your Own model that your partnerships with colleges actually have the ability to have the student have that experience back home where they get that guaranteed contract you might be doing in step 3. Now, the question ultimately that was posed was, what is the effectiveness of just doing the chapter model and maybe not the CTE program that's taught during the day? And there are a lot of folks that do that. There are states where we are the CTSO, but the state may have some other curriculum that they've self-written or with a university or something like that. And certainly don't want to dissuade people from that model. But as we look at our research, those that are in the Ed Rising CTE program during the day tend to have a more effective experience because when they get into the CTSO, they're taking what they learned in the course during the day and activating that in the CTSO experience. Maybe they have clinical internships. Well, the curriculum is what's preparing them to be successful in there and know how to approach students with the best pedagogy. If they get into the competition and conference experience of Ed Rising, and if you don't know how this works in Grow Your Own programs, your students might take the accounting course in high school, but they might be in DECA or FBLA from a competition standpoint. Well, what we know about high school students is if they have an extracurricular experience, the research is overwhelming that they're more engaged in school. And so that would be like saying, well, what about students that are in marching band only but don't take band as a class, or students that are in the band class only and don't take marching band? Well, they'll still have an effective experience and we'll still be able to move them along the pipeline, but it's not nearly as effective as being part of the band program in the course and in the after school experiences as well. And so we know that the students that have our curriculum perform better at state and national competitions. They're better prepared for teaching because our curriculum is the one that's been based on National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. So they're not just being prepared on how to become a teacher, or some other curricula will just prepare students, say, for early childhood experiences. we're preparing students with that deep pedagogy to prepare them for the most success in the classroom. And frankly, students can start building their national board portfolio as early as high school. And then what we know is when they get into that college experience, we're losing a lot of teachers in the pipeline in the first 2 years of college. They're not taking a lot of education courses, if any, because they're doing their general studies courses. They're not connected to education if they don't have a chapter of Ed Rising or aspiring educators at their college. And in those 2 years, they find other extracurricular interests, other curricular interests, and tend to start thinking about a variety of majors. Whereas if they stay in the club experience, stay engaged with students, maybe work part-time as a parapro or even full-time as a parapro while going to college, maybe student teaching, maybe tutoring, while being a part of the chapter experience and that community that happens when you're working with people towards the same goal. All 10 of these steps are important for getting the outcomes and getting the matriculation from high school into the field. And I can tell you stories along the way, even number 10, which seems, somewhat superfluous. If those former Ed Rising students don't take an active role in recruiting future educators and sharing their own experience about how they went through Ed Rising, you're not going to get as many students in the program. But that spiral of going back and forth of being in your district, learning the CTE program, going to college with college supports, getting that guaranteed contract from the district, being able to student teach back home, being guaranteed a job back in the district when they come back, and then you become a mentor for future students. That if nothing else, but besides the research has done, if that's not self-evident in the way to build a pipeline, it's essential. And yeah, there's all these new alternate pathways, such as registered apprenticeship and all that are become a part of this. That doesn't change this spiral. Students may just get into a registered apprenticeship, and instead of going straight to the 4-year, they're going straight into jobs while they earn their degree. But the pre-apprenticeship model of what they experience in high school is essential to getting them excited and building their engagement around education for the long haul. So Dr. Coleman, hope I answered your question, but wanted to add more context to the spiral because we get that question all the time. What if I just do some of this, but not all of this? You'll still be getting more teachers in the pipeline, even if you do part of this. But if you do all of this, it's the most effective way to build out a teacher pipeline from your community. And, the other thing, and Levi didn't mention this much, but a lot of school districts are coming to us and saying, we get a ton of new teachers, but we need more diversity in the classroom and to be more reflective of the communities that we're in. Well, by recruiting from your community, you tend to see that matriculate through this model as well. And whereas 52% of students in the nation are students of color, you're tending to see much lower percentages going into schools of education. The interesting thing about the full implementation of this model in the Ed Rising program is we mirror the student demographic. 53% of students in our programs are students of color, almost exactly mirroring the population of students. And so that growing your own from the community is one of the best ways, not only to prepare them for teaching, but to make sure that your community is reflective of the values that they want in front of their students. Levi, I'll turn it back to you.
I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks so much, James, and I appreciate you jumping in and clarifying. I would love to talk very briefly about additional policy recommendations and reflections at the close of the paper. I think that our findings underscore the imperative for policymakers in particular to prioritize investments in community-centric teacher preparations programs like Ed Rising by fostering a supportive policy environment and addressing all 10 of those cycles that steps in the cycle, James, that you did such a good job, much better job than I did of explaining. And by fostering a positive policy environment, policymakers can catalyze the scaling, sustainability, and equitable distribution of innovative programs aimed at addressing teacher shortages and fostering educational experiences. As a part of the white paper that was released a couple of weeks ago, we also included the draft legislation that James mentioned at the beginning of the call. That draft legislation goes through a variety of steps, which I'm happy to enumerate for folks that are interested in the call regarding what steps that you can take to engage with your policymakers at a local or state level and providing them the tools that they will need in order to bring this legislation forward so as to enact an effective Ed Rising program That includes the stages within those 10 stages within the cycle that we shared, and includes some appropriation language as well. And for folks that are interested in using the legislation that we have shared, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will walk through it with you and make sure that you feel like you have the tools to be an advocate for this work as well. I think a couple of the other recommendations that were included here have to do with some of the programmatic enhancements. So talking a little bit about the expansion of mentorship networks within EdRising, integration of culturally responsive pedagogy, and amplifying student voice within the curriculum. Those are all projects that I am currently working with, and that my firm is currently working with EdRising on. So really excited about that work. So please stay tuned as that continues to develop. And broadly, embracing a culture of continuous improvement and innovation, EdRising is going to continue to enhance its impact and relevance across the diverse educational context. So really excited for the work to continue. As we reflect on the myriad of dimensions of EdRising's impact, we're reminded of the transformative potential that this group has to shape the trajectory of teacher preparation. In my view, EdRising stands as a testament to the power of collective action, collaboration, and innovation in fostering educational equity, excellence, and empowerment. And really excited to continue to dig into the work that EdRising is doing and sharing the findings as they come forward.
Levi, just so that we kind of stay engaged with our listeners as they ask questions, and you were just talking about partnerships. One of the questions that came in talks about partnerships, so I'm going to answer that question as well. And one of our attendees asked the question, what communication have you had with NEA and AFT leaders? We actually get this question a lot, especially in states where collective bargaining is, throughout the state. The answer is, people sometimes ask me, are you a part of NEA? Are you a part of AFT? PDK International owns the brand rights to Educators Rising, and we lead the Educators Rising program. And so I want to say that clearly, and we are not a subsidiary of any other company. In fact, we have several other business lines, such as our Phi Delta Kappa and Pi Lambda Theta opportunities for membership that many of you I know are a part of. But we work very closely with NEA and AFT leaders to make them aware of our work. And NEA, I will say, has gone as far as to endorse Educators Rising as their preferred high school grow your own pathway. AFT is also a supporter of our work. Were just talking to us the other day about a publication that they're going to put out talking about promising practices in the teacher pipeline, and Educators Rising will be one of those. And AFT and NEA were actually at the table while we were having conversations about the standards that we based on the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. And so we've tried really closely to make sure that, teachers that work together throughout the nation are aware of our work and supportive of it. And we've been thankful to have the support of those two organizations you asked about. So thank you for the question.
Thanks for addressing that, James. The last thing that I will say is that for folks who have not had a chance to look at the official white paper or the legislation, that is going to be sent to you via email if you registered for the webinar at some point later this week. So please do take a glance at both of those. And again, want to express appreciation for your engagement with them. And if you have any questions or want to discuss or figure out how to enact some of them in your own home state, please feel free to reach out to us.
So with that, we'll continue to take any questions that you have. Levi talked a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing in the legislative side, and the white paper that is referenced today, we will certainly send that out to all of you that are attending the webinar today. We'll also pair that with the draft legislation that you can look at, because we know, as I look down the list of who's on the call, we have a number of policymakers on the call, and we get questions all the time of how can we bring this to our state? I work for a delegate in X state, and they're interested in growing, your own pathways throughout their state. And so we actually wrote a draft piece of legislation that sits on our website that can be considered in any state. Obviously, any legislator that's on the call, we ask you to put your own community values into that. We also suggested appropriations numbers, because that often becomes a conversation of, okay, we can essentially promote grow your own pathways. We hope with Educators Rising, certainly there are a number of ways that you can go about this. But as you're thinking about building out that spiral that we showed you, there are obviously costs that can go along with that. And so any of you that are state policymakers, federal policymakers that are thinking about this, we can show you essentially how to structure the cost so that this can be supported. And for those of you that are district leaders, and I see a number of district leaders and teachers on the call, we would ask that you leave your information with us, and we can talk to you more about how to bring the program to your community. But I'm going to stop here and just see if we have any new questions. Question, will we be able to get the slide deck? Absolutely. Anyone that registered for the call will be sent the slide deck, the draft legislation, and the draft appropriations language will be in the legislation piece, and the white paper that Levi did as he did this study on the effectiveness of growing your own programs, and specifically Ed Rising. Looking to see, a few more questions popping in here. Let's take a look. So the next question is, how quickly can a program get up and running in a district? So the answer is very, very fast. Typically what we will do is, if you reach out to us after today, and we'll certainly be reaching out to you directly after you attend the webinar with the materials that I've discussed. But if you want to continue that conversation with us about bringing the curriculum to your district or school, literally just there's a place on the website where you can fill out a form. I'll have John actually drop that link in the chat, or we'll follow up with you directly from the webinar. But we'll sit down with you. We'll walk you through the curriculum. We'll walk you through the costs of implementation. Essentially because there's a curriculum, it's similar to the charge for a textbook, if you will, or something like that. Of course, we don't have a textbook. Our materials are all accessible online, and we will send you a quote. As soon as you approve that quote, sign a contract with us, we will turn on your access within 24 hours. And then as part of signing up for the curriculum, we will actually do training with your teachers. We have virtual options for training. We do an intensive training at our national conference, which, by the way, if you haven't signed up to come to our national conference, I highly recommend it. 3,000 students around the nation come to our conference. I don't know if there's a larger student conference out there that just focuses on teachers and the teaching pipeline. And the kids are absolutely amazing. The competitions are worth seeing. One of my favorites is called the Ed Rising Moment, where first generation college students tell the story of the moment that they knew that they wanted to be a teacher. And I'm telling you, I feel like I'm a pretty tough guy, but bring your Kleenex. The stories are just incredible. But after we do training with your teachers, they essentially can be implementing this as early as this fall. And we have some folks on a semester schedule who actually signed on to the program with us in December, and we're implementing the curriculum in January. So as long as we can get time with your teachers to train, it really is a matter of your procurement or selection process. Because our curriculum is sole source, usually you can move through the procurement process really quickly. Last thing that I will say about how quickly you can get implemented is we are a nonprofit. We charge exactly what it costs to run the program on our side. We don't make money on this. And our mission is about eliminating the teacher shortage. And we provide a lot of services in kind. You're not just paying for the curriculum. You're paying for us to help you build out the spiral. We will work with you on dual enrollment agreements with local colleges to make sure your students get dual enrollment. We'll help your students while they're in the program complete the FAFSA and look for scholarship programs. We offer scholarships directly to Ed Rising students to go to college. We'll work with you on language that you can use to guarantee students contracts to come back home. We'll work with your local universities and community colleges to make sure they will allow you to have student teaching back in your community. We'll work with you on a national signing day so that you can celebrate those students that have made the decision to have a career in teaching. And so and of course, all of the chapter fees and expenses are covered in all of the activities that you do there if you become a part of the curriculum project. So we can work with you really quickly, but it's not just about signing up for the curriculum and then training your teachers. We will come in as a partner of yours and set up the whole spiral experience with you, and help your district leaders think about how to navigate that. Now we have new questions coming in. Let me see what we got here. Okay. At the conference in June in Washington, is there an opportunity for training on how to best teach the curriculum? Yes. We actually, for any new teacher to the curriculum, you can do a virtual training with us throughout the year, but we do an in-person intensive. And I'm telling you, the best way to get trained on the curriculum is at the national conference, because what you get to do is you get the full 2 days of training, but then you get to see that in action by walking out and going into the conference and the competitions, and see how utilizing the curriculum can actually build your students' skills to be competitive for national championships and state championships. So not only do we do curriculum training at the conference, I would say it's the best way to get trained, but certainly we'll do it in a virtual setting if your teacher can't travel or they're unavailable that week with vacation. And then frankly, we're happy to work with you on site as well. And that seems to be, oh, here we go. How do we know who can help us with the things you're mentioning? We've been confused about who the right contacts are for Ed Rising. Folks seem to change quickly. So it's not so much that folks are changing quickly. What's happening at Ed Rising is we're growing so fast, we're adding additional staff. Unlike a lot of nonprofits, we're adding about 50% more Ed Rising chapters and curricular partners every year. So what's happening is we're growing our team, and we've doubled the size of our team. And so the best way to connect with us is to, if you're especially a decision maker in your district, is you can reach out to me directly as the CEO, and I will make sure you know who your state lead is. But we now have regional territory managers for every state, so you know exactly who your person is. But at a minimum, and I'm going to put this in the chat, our national director of outreach and engagement is, sorry, I think I just hit send too fast, is Lisa Rollins. And I'm putting her email into the chat. And you can reach out directly to Lisa if you're already a partner, so you make sure you know who your implementation support manager is. We've also built out a full customer service team and implementation team, and that person's name is Debbie Weaver-Balo. And so I'll be happy, whether it's through Lisa or an email to me, and I'll put my email in the chat. And John, if you'll put Debbie's email in the chat for me, just so I can keep answering questions, we will connect you to the person in your state. But yes, we know that maybe you worked with the same person for years who, at one point we only had 2 outreach specialists at PDK, and they were handling 25 states each. We now have more than doubled the size of that team so that you can get actually more intensive customer service support. So look forward to working with you. But the name that John just dropped in the chat, Debbie Weaver-Balo, is the implementation support specialist for the company. So even if you don't know your new salesperson, as we've doubled the size of the team, Debbie is the person on customer service and support and training and implementation. Thank you for the question, Julia. Okay, and I'm not seeing any new questions. Any more questions before we wrap today? Well, again, on behalf of PDK International and on behalf of Educators Rising, thank you for being a part of this movement. We are here to be your partner to help eliminate the teacher shortage. We look forward to working with you. If you don't have a teacher academy or a teacher pipeline program in your public schools in your community, we're more than happy to help. And like I said, we're growing immensely because once people see what we do, they want to be a part of the movement, and we want you to be a part of the movement. So definitely click the link that John sent out, fill out the information form. We'll follow up with you on the research that you've learned today, plus information about potential legislation that can be considered in your state. But remember, you don't need legislation to implement this. You need a teacher and a principal excited about building teachers in their community. And from there, we can help you go the rest of the way, and look forward to working with you. Thank you all for being with us today, and have a great evening.